Hey there everybody, this is Fatal Gear, and I am making a video today to show you a crazy awesome new invention that I made in LittleBigPlanet 2. So, let's just skip past these for a second. First off, let's crank up the light a little bit so we can see what we're doing. Now, most people have probably, at some point, tried to make some kind of health system. You want a Sackbot or some other enemy to take damage. You want to be able to put, you know, different amounts of damage. So, I had an idea, and I threw together this chip. It's a health point chip. How it works is, pause. You got this nice little health bar up there. It's got 100 points to it. You can, you know, adjust that if you want. And then it has a bunch of inputs on the side. So, let's get a switch over here, and there's the switches. Alright, throw it on a button. Now as you can see, we can hook up this button to either heal the person, deal 1 damage, deal 25 damage, deal 10 damage, deal 5 damage. So we'll hook it up to the 5 damage, and then we'll open the microchip up. And let's step on the button. Now as you can see, what it does is it resets one of those counters down at the bottom, and that basically pulses. And every time it pulses, it subtracts one from the counter at the top and the counter at the bottom until the counter at the bottom is empty again. So there's, you know, a bunch of OR gates and some other complicated things on there that, you know, you don't really need to worry about right this second. But basically how it works is it keeps pulsing. So if you take more damage, it actually takes longer to subtract it from the health. So let's move this up to the subtract 25 option, for instance. Notice, you can watch it pulsing and counting down. So, it's a decent health system, but obviously what happens if you get hit by the same thing twice, you don't necessarily take the full amount of damage, since it could still be counting. So it'll only reset the counter at the bottom. It won't, it's not able to add multiples, since it's pretty likely that you'll actually be hit, you know, more than once for a couple damage. So, I created a tiered system that's, I mean, it's all kind of just crammed together on the chip to fit in as small space as possible, so I can't really pull it apart and show you precisely where it is. But basically I have a system where if the ones are counting, it stops the other counts and lets the lower numbers count first, so they don't interrupt each other, which is good. But that doesn't really solve the problem entirely. So I got to thinking, and this is a nice chip. I mean, if you want to use it, you can make a decent health system with this. But it's just not as powerful as I'd like it to be. So we scrapped this system completely. It's just not efficient. What I came up with over here is an analog system. Now, this thing over here is pulsing. As you can see, it's pulsing. And you're probably wondering what it's doing exactly. Well, you can probably see this sequencer. So this sequencer is actually counting up every time it pulses. And it's counting up by 1/50,000th. So, as you can see, I've got that set to 5,000 seconds, and they're increments of 1/10 of a second, so that gives you 50,000 units. And this is basically an analog counter. You can set it to a specific value. The way I have this set. This will set it to whatever percentage that you have this timer set to when you press this button right here. So if I want to set it to 40%, hit it. Maybe this one needs to start pulsing first. There we go. Sets it to 40%. If you're pulsing at the exact second, it's a little iffy, but that generally won't happen. Anyway, long story short, I just set it to 40%. Now you can notice here, I can change this timer. This timer now no longer affects the output. So I can basically set this to whatever, trigger it once, and then it sets it. Essentially, it's an analog memory cell. It remembers what value you put into it, and then you can use its output to output that value wherever you want it. So in this instance, this is my advanced one. This one actually can do math. So this one here, and we will, let's modify this thing. Oh, what did I do here? Oh, let's see. No, crud. Okay, so this basically does, this whole chip keeps track of your values. Now, since you can't, there's normally the only way to input and output an analog value from the same item is through a control stick here. So what we've done is we've gotten a Sackbot, and I put him on a piece of hologram with a controlinator on it, so he doesn't actually occupy any physical space. And that way you can place him wherever you want in a level, and it just kind of sits there. So you can't put it on a normal microchip, or otherwise the connections automatically get disconnected on the controlinator, and it makes it not work, unfortunately. So I wish it did work that way. It doesn't. Basically, though, let me figure out where I gotta rewire this battery to. It should just be the subtraction. So that should be there, I think. Pass this to that. Yeah, I think so. Or no, I want the addition. Sorry. Okay. We need the addition one. Okay. So let's go back to our addition battery. And let's just plug that right back in. Alright. So this chip, of lesser importance, is an addition chip. Basically, you plug in two values and it outputs the total value of the two. I'll go over that later or in a different video, whichever. Either way, once I get back over here, here's this chip is a settings chip. There are a couple chips here just for simplicity. This one is settings, as you can see. So this one, they don't have to be batteries. They can really be anything like I showed you with this timer down there. But for batteries are easier. Problem being you only have 100 values, so you can't really do values at increments less than 1. See? But what we'll do is we'll set this to add 10 and subtract, let's say 20. Okay. Spots. Now what'll happen, I step in my addition button, we'll add 10. Or 10 stripes. So each one is 10%. That subtracts 20. And this is happening instantaneously. So I can set those to any value I want, and I can even add multiple add or subtract functions. So just do a little rewiring up there. And what you can do then is you can create a health system that actually uses any value you want, and it calculates instantly. So it's incredibly useful. And then you can set it, like I said here. So let's say there's an item that restores your health completely, or is an instant kill, or something of that caliber. You can set it to full, you can set it to 0, and again, you can set multiple triggers that will set it to specific values. Really, like I've been talking about health bars, there are really a limitless amount of applications. Like right here, I have this Sackbot up at the top. He is moving to the right at whatever the value of the output is, so if I subtract it, he'll... generally, they don't really move until about 50%. Now you can see him walking. And he will keep getting a little bit faster every time I increase the output there. So then I can come over here, I can set it back to, let's say, a nice leisurely walking pace. And now he'll just walk over there real casually. And I can subtract it again. And then I've got this, you know, ooh. I don't know how that got moved out of place, but anyway, it's kind of hard to see, which is why I had the lights off originally. Holograms. The square there gets brighter or dimmer based on the value, so you can make that dimmer. And the red arrow there has a rotator on it, which has the speed scale, so it gets faster and faster the higher the value is. Anyway, that's the advanced memory cell up there. That does the math. The problem with the math is that it uses direction combiners, which is really the only way to do math reliably, and in doing so, it basically ignores the sign, so you can't use negative values with the math. But other than that, it's an excellent tool. and is probably one of the things that people have been wanting most since this game came out, so really hoping this catches on. Over here we have a basic cell. The basic cell, all it does is you store a value and retrieve that value. So you've got input, output. In this case, we have this guy currently output to 100%. And so he's trying to run against that right wall. This battery is set to -70, so if we press the button, it'll store it at -70, and he'll take off to the left. So you can set it back to, you know, 80, positive 80. It'll start running the other way. And you can change this, do whatever. It doesn't change the signal until you press the button, just like the other one. So it's a memory cell, just like... it's just a memory cell, I should say. No math in this one. But also very useful. You can do a lot of neat stuff with it. And to highlight my point, like I was saying about the health bar system, this guy is rigged up. He has a projectile sensor. And his projectile sensor will trigger a subtract option. This is just some extra stuff to control destroying him. Don't worry about it. This is subtract. Alright, so he should take 10 hits. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then he goes kaboom. So that's basically how that works. Now, I can set that value, like I said, to anything I want. I can set it to 1 if I wanted. I could set it to 1/1000th if I wanted. He could, you know, you can set it to absolutely any number. The only thing you need to keep in mind is that when you set it to a value that's outside of, you know, the normal 100 range, you're working with fractions. So it's essentially you're still on a scale of 0% to 100%. So if I use my battery and set it to 50% on a scale that I was using a timer for to make it, you know, 50,000 or something, it's going to count 25,000 values when I input 50% to it, to add 50% anyway. So you got to keep that in mind. But if you set all of your values here to a timer, all you do is you put something to its input that's off so that the timer doesn't keep counting. And then you... where's my timers? There are my timers. Okay. So basically how this works, just ignore the decimal points, basically. At 4 seconds, you have 40 units. So, because you've got, you know, 40, 41, 42, 43, okay. Anyway, so let's say our target time, we want 273 health. And then we're going to set the current time here to the amount that we want to add or subtract. So our current time, we set it to 0.1 seconds. And it will, after we, whoops. I didn't mean to do that. Okay. Pause the game. Okay. Oh. Alright. Go back up. 273 points. And we'll take off 3 points every time. Well, no, let's make that 27. Alright. We'll take off basically 3 points every time you get hit. So this is the subtract. All we gotta do then is throw it off, so it doesn't count. And it'll stay at that value. And oops. Just move that battery out of the way. And there we go. Now it'll subtract 3 270ths every time we hit him with a water. So open the sequencer again. See, he's at full health. Throw water at him, and he will take a substantially more hits to kill than first time to increase his health. Now, as you can see, it's not counting instantly because the projectile sensor here takes a second to reset. The reset when full option, you can see it lasts for about 1/10 of a second, maybe, you know, a couple of tenths of a second. So I recommend making custom projectiles because then you can make a pulsar that pulses incredibly quickly. Pulsar, basically all you do, well, you would set an impact sensor up to a counter, but to just get a sense of how fast it actually counts. That's how fast pulses can go. So when you look at how fast the projectile sensor resets, you can see why it's kind of a problem using the projectile sensor. So you could actually be counting significantly faster. You can count at every one of these pulse ticks that you can see here. So that's actually how fast it is to add or subtract absolutely any value using the analog system. And then, boom, okay, he's dead. So anyway, that's basically all I wanted to show in this video. If you guys want to see, actually, you know what? I got one more thing. Some other chips that I made. And you can use these. I was actually designing a puzzle for my This Is Science series, which, despite the name, is actually a platformer puzzle level. It's not really educational and doesn't really use actual science, but anyway, I was designing an electricity-based puzzle, so I made some neat gadgets. Here's the sum chip. Like I said, all you do, input 1, input 2, output, adds them together. It won't go over 100%, it won't do negatives, so problem there. A little bit, not too big of a deal. Resistor, basically the same deal. You put in one input, and it subtracts whatever you have the battery set to. So if I have the battery at, you know, 10 or 20%, won't subtract too much. So let's say I've got a battery, set it to 100%, throw our resistor, and we're resisting how much? 20%. Then let's throw in a sequencer, just to show it off. Positional, and throw our resistor. So you can see that's start with 6 bars. I don't know why they start with 6 bars. Anyway, 80% there. And then I can go over here to my resistor, can increase the power of it, and as you can see, it'll subtract accordingly. The addition chip, so let's say we set this to 50%, or let's set it to 20, or 75, so that we have 25% coming off. Then what we can do is we can throw these into our sum chip, add those two together, and we should get 50%. So basically how those work. The potentiometer is essentially the same thing as the resistor, except it has a little scale here. What you can do with this is, let's get some buttons and a direction combiner. And we will plug this into potentiator. And let's get rid of that. And put that in there. And we'll run the battery into our signal. So our battery is now running through the potentiometer. And what the potentiometer does is essentially a resistor with a dial. So what it does is, once we turn it up, I gotta find my buttons. There's my button. Like that one add, that one subtract. Okay. So we'll put this one in the positive, this one into the negative, and that timer is a forwards backwards timer there. So what it'll do is that'll add, that'll basically resist more, that one resists less, and it's, so like I said, resistor on a dial, pretty neat stuff. Look forward to it in my This Is Science series. I'll put a link to that in the description. Only the first level is finished now, but if you want to see it, I would recommend checking it out. It's basically this guy. That's where I got the costume from. And you can run around and throw different elements around. So basically you can set yourself on fire and then you throw fireballs, or you can turn to electricity and throw electricity. And there are puzzles based on what the different elements. So if you're using the electricity power, you can maybe throw electricity at something that's metal. It'll start, it'll get charged up. It'll either power something, turn something on, or it'll just turn it, into a dangerous surface, basically. The same thing with fire. So if there's like a cardboard box, you can throw fireballs at it, and it'll actually incinerate it. And then you can do the same with plasma. So there's lots of neat stuff you can do with that. And so the electricity puzzle, I was basically going to have some components. Got them in my poppet over here. put them? Just a battery. I did this. Tags are actually pretty neat. Whatever amount of energy I have running into a tag, it'll actually only output that much strength in the tag, and that is what the tag sensors, what setting is that? The tag sensor has a setting called signal strength. So the signal strength will pick up whatever that tag going into it is. So if I adjust the strength of this battery, you can see that it actually lessens the signal going through here. And that's kind of why I designed the resistors originally, was for this puzzle. See if I throw a resistor right there. Let's get a grid going. Hey, whatever. Okay. Do I have that the wrong way? Oh. There we go. Okay. So basically then there are resistors in the circuit, and let's crank that up so you can see it. And there you go. So then that'll resist, and then that'll pass on the resisted signal. And it'll keep going, and there'll be some puzzle where you have to move these components around. I haven't really made the puzzle itself yet, because I was having fun with this, but anyway, I will probably make another video when that's done, and I'll show that off. Like I said, I'll put a link to the first level in the description. It's kind of a tutorial. And I will also be publishing this level with all the analog memory cells eventually. I'm going to make it look a little bit nicer first. But once I publish that, I'll put a link to that in the description as well, and you can grab these items for yourself. So, I'll see you later.